Na your topic ebekasa afa ho no was hearing and listening.
Today's topic for our sermon is hearing and listening.
Saa kasa ye kasa mienu a bia kire ne ho ase.
These two words are two different words with different meaning.
Na ye kan hearing no a otie.
When you talk of hearing, it's by just listening.
Nanso ye kan listening so a otie a asesa wadwen asesa onipadua amwakotibia foforo.
So as I said, hearing is mere listening, but when you talk about listening, it goes beyond hearing, that's changing from your old ways, your old lifestyle to a new one.
Na onyankopon hia baako sa onipa bia ebeyusu.
Of both hearing and listening, God needs one. As human, we are supposed to choose one to use it.
Esan se ukọ wachi ekohwe 16th century bra omode brofo kasa omo twe Greek kasa no dia ba brofo mu no a saa bre no omo nti ase mu no omo yusu healing no more.
When we date back to the 16th century, when we were changing the Greek to English language, they were using more of listening. Hearing, sorry. They were using more of hearing.
Nanso brofo no ababedu yan pensu omo hu yan say listening no ya de a ehia yie esre healing.
As the word keeps on changing up to our level, we came to realize that the listening is more important to that of the hearing.
Anunti say ye be school for away munti making kan said ye wo kirase no na yetumi ahunu said ye be fasem.
For the sake of the students among us, I'll read how well we will understand both hearing and listening.
Hearing is the passive physical act of sound entering your ears.
The can hearing say asem nitia wanyina ne say asem ewura wasu.
Ebetumi ayasem bia keke.
It can be everything.
Na listening nso said ye brofo no kokoduru esoro na enei nti asie mu no o kire mu say is the active mental process of focusing on interpreting and understanding those sounds that you hear.
Inti ye can listening na said ye can say ewani mu chen hearing no eti say wate asem no wode wadwen adi asem ne achi wadwene ho anya enchiremu na afi wate asem no ase.
Anunti hon kronkron no nam onua Luke so ekan ye say say ye hwede ye nuan bekenkan na Luke 8 verse 18 no say na oyusu kasa ne mienu e de kasai.
So the Holy Spirit through Luke, in Luke chapter 8 verse 18, this is how it reads.
So pay attention to how you hear. To those who listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given. But for those who are not listening, even what they think they understand will be taken away from them.
Intinity awanyina ne se wona asem no otie na odwen ho no omunya aba bebre efiri asem.
Onyankopon ehia otie esan se otie eyade a enam so ema hon kronkron no etimi nya kwan eben onipa oboa onipa.
God needs people who are listening because through the listening it will guide us for us to know how well we can do the will of God.
Onyankopon hye okristoni bia se onfa bibi ema ni nua na onua no ntie enam so ama wayeden abegene.
God mandates each and every Christian here that we should give something to a brethren for him or he to hear, so that through that he can make a good use of it.
Enam otie no otie so enti ne nedai uti asori dem.
Through hearing and listening, that's the main reason you and I are here.
Asan said there were tieno, upasa wodi ya juma, anuti ne ya fra wo Kristo bi.
Because what you have heard, you want to implement it. That's why you are called Christian.
Asan si Roman fon wan ti du nchichemu du nson no kire se enam otie so ena onipa enya gidie.
In Romans chapter 10 verse 17, he said, true listening is how a brethren or member get fit.
Anunti onyankopon hya wo se miawani ni fa asam no ma obi na ontie ni yie.
So God command us to give his word to brethren for him or her to listen and listen well.
Eyo shema o Kristo ni bia se o kire ni gidi akura nu akire obi na wote ase yi.
It's mandatory for every Christian here to explain your faith to a member for him or her to understand very well.
Na se onua ben wo na wa ama na ante na wa ante ase a obewu ni boni.
So if a member or a relative or a friend closer to you, if you do not let him or her listen, or if you not give the word of God to the person and he or she does not listen and make a decision out of it, that particular person will die in his or her sin.
Anunti eya ohye ama obi ase oka onyame asem no na obi tie na otiase.
So it's mandatory for everyone here to spread the word of God, for somebody to listen and take a good decision out of it.
Asansi gidie no enam otie so.
Because faith comes through listening.
Anunti de wo mu a wo konya nkwaje no se wa ma obi ante a oni no ebewu oni boni.
So what is being brought in you, if you don't pass it to any other person, that particular person will die in his or her sin.
Otie ayade a ehia se onipa bia betie no betie onyankopon asem.
Listening is very important, and it's very necessary that as an individual you listen and listen to the word of God.
Yanhwe emfaso bi a enam otie so ema abusua bi adane firi bone a omotim ababeye a Christopher.
Let's take an example of a family which through listening they tend to be Christians.
Sadia won so wote ni mfie bi atwamu a woni wabusua nyina te ha no sa otie no ho mfaso ebi na wo ende.
As you also heard years ago, and through that you and your family are in this room.
Na yehwe asomafo sem no as 16:14.
Acts chapter 16 verse 14.
Now say na okinkan. Or say one of them, okay, let me go back. Verse 14. Yamre ninti ma hu se papa na peja na de wo begina aha na omo hunahuna. Anunti me twitwa so. One of them was Lydia from Thyatira, a merchant of expensive purple cloth.
Now, baby, and dindi Lydia or turn to Makokwa or free Thyatira kroni.
Who worship God?
Our ferry onyankopon.
Oma enyina ha. Sa onipa ye koka asam na kire na manatie no 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 so nyame dada.
This particular person whom we are going to preach the gospel to is a Christian already.
No, I'm assuming.
It's
I'm assuming.
Okay. That person whom we are going to preach the word to is someone who worship God.
Aha, eti wonga atwa mo ho ahia o mo kwa sori bia no. Mu hu se ebra Christianity sha ase no. Omo mo kwa sori nyinara yekoka asem no kire wo na wo mo te.
One thing you should take into consideration is that when Christianity started, all those among us, all those closer to us who worship God, we preach the word of God to them and they listen.
Asansi sabra ne onyamesoma na wo ho Judaism.
At that time, the only religion there was Judaism.
Na wo ma no mo Judaism no nyina ye koka asem no kire wo na wo te.
And all those in Judaism, they heard the word of God and they listened.
ɛno nti mesi so bio verse 14. One of them was Lydia from Thyatira, a merchant of expensive purple cloth, who worshiped God. As she listened, otie, the council will use the word listen now. Otie, ako dream, ako kumum, now they are juma, and no listen, a juma, and yet hearing.
So we're talking about Lydia when she heard the word of God, she listened. And not just mere listening, but interpreting it and making good use out of it.
Anunti Paul anuma sam said otie won.
So Paul said they listened to them.
Na se otie bi ba afi ansa no Nyankopɔn honhom no be hyase ye adwuma.
So after listening, that's where the Spirit of God begins to work.
Anunti say na kwa the Lord open her heart. Anamontutu we ni nyina ba afi ansa no Nyankopɔn ebebie okumam na de na ntiase akwa chiri na aka wumu na wo de adwuma.
So after listening everything, that's where the Lord opens your heart so that you used what you have listening to take a good decision.
Na ni gisam no say Christianity a Church of Christ and nay muhui. Edua abusua mu se mo de mo ne me ba ya adwen a. Obi biara ne nsabeka biara no, one ne dom, one na busua, one ne ma. No wa fi wiase no no de ne ma ne na busua na ba bedua. Adentia, sanse ote na wotie ne ye na ode ye adwuma.
One happy thing about Christianity is that when a member hears the word, listen very well, and interpret it, that particular member takes his or her whole family out of their own lifestyle or their own sin and turn into Christ.
Asanse nkwaje na eba ebe ya niji sa wonu abusua nyina nsa ebeka bi.
Because the salvation which is on its way, it will be more delight, more happy that the entire family will get that salvation.
In the first century, Church of Christ and a war sabren, or Fiamu Kodani, one and Sum Yamina Begura.
So in the first century, Church of Christ at that time, they went into household to teach them or to preach them the gospel of Christ.
As I say, one brown who has it tea, nor tea.
They humbled themselves and listened to the word of God.
Verse 15, she and her household were baptized.
Verse 15, they say, Obo, on any fearful na esu.
Anunti, Sabreno, Bible mu, and Chirachirani Bible mu, or Summon and Cassano. As someone will move pet the ediso any asubo.
At that time, when we preach the gospel to you and you listen and you welcome the gospel, what follows next is baptism.
Na sana onipano abetena wurade fie onyankopon de ne ho nkonkron no enso ama.
Before the person will come to the house of the Lord for God to give that particular person the Holy Spirit.
Na ahwaso die mienu na ye bekasa fa ho san se ye nuanom pampam ye. Enu nti
we're going to talk about two examples this morning.
Acts 18 if 6 na kono so ye nuamo Corinthia na ye nyina nim so ye stubborn e wo ma brabo mu no won so etie na wote.
So Acts chapter 18 verse 6 talks about members at the church of Corinth.
Wotie asase no mo te bia bebree mu boni ahodo bebree mu nanso oto ombo asiti asem no wote.
So upon all their sins, all their iniquities, they took their time and listened to the word of God.
Ya fa kasa ni mi bra. Omotie no omotie.
So we're talking about hearing and listening at the same time.
Asase otie de akola bi bon mu afikyira ha. Obeti but nyom kwan hye dem tie ni ye. Na mo ye kasa obi atie bibi dia na ye serious be sesa ni nipa bia.
So when you talk about hearing, it's just mere something entering into your ears. but listening it goes deeper than hearing, where you make good decision out of it.
hwɛ sɛ asɛm a ɛhyɛ ɔmu nti a wɔbɛtena dan mu ha no obi bɛte ansa na wafi asase so.
Make sure that the reason why you came to this room, what you have heard, you pass it to somebody for that particular person to also hear, take a good decision out of it through listening.
Anyɛ saa deɛ wɔwɔ mu no a wowate a ɛno nti wote ha no wobɛfi asase yi so na w'akyifoɔ no nso ante.
Because what you have heard, what you have listening, and is within you, if you don't pass it on to another person, you leave this world and those people will not get the chance to hear or listen.
Yɛn nua Paul wokenkan Romanfo nwoma no a osui ɔtete ɛsiane sɛ nkwagye kwan no na aba bɛda hɔ no na Israelfoɔ no ntumi ntie nti wɔn ante aseɛ.
In the books of Romans, Paul cried because that salvation message which were there, the Israelites were not able to hear and interpret it. Thus, they were not able to listen.
Ɛno nti yɛhwehwɛ kenkan Acts 18 no a verses no Paul kɔɔ baabi a ne Jewfoɔ no dɔɔso paa na ɛsi kɔm tie no nanso ɔhaw bebree na ɛsi yie.
So in Acts chapter 18 verse 6, Paul went where the Jews were, and instead of them to listen to him, so many things happened to prevent them from listening.
Ɔse, but when they opposed and insulted him, wabɛka Nyankopɔn asɛm akyerɛ wɔn na ne wɔn nte aseɛ nkɔ nti wɔn anto wɔn bo wɔn antie ɛna wɔn ate aseɛ nti wɔn hyɛ aseɛ sɛ wɔn bɛtan Paul ani de di n'atɛm ahunahuna.
So when Paul preached the gospel to them, and since it contradicted to what they already knew, they began to do so many wrong things to Paul, because what he was saying was different from what they already knew.
Ɛno nti ɛma Paul de yi a ɛkasa tia a wɔn nyinaa na ne nsankaeɛ no nie. Paul shook the dust from his clothes and said, saa kasa no ɛnyɛ sɛ yɛn nua Paul no na ɔnam hɔ no na efi ne mfuturo ɛwɔ n'ataadeɛ mu nti bere a ne bu fu yɛ no na ɔwɔ so ataadeɛ no na mfuturo no etu gu na ɛka litra etu gu ɔman ne so na ɛyɛ bɛ ɛyɛ kasa nti ɛne time bi a ɔbɛka biribi akyerɛ obi na ɔgye w'akyi yɛ na ɔntie no ɔdane wo ho na bere a ɔdane wo ho a wɔrekɔ wo baabi no ase kyerɛ na Bible no ɛkyerɛ no ɔsɛ but when they opposed and insulted him, Paul shook the dust from his clothes and said, your blood is upon your own heads. I'm innocent.
Nti asomafoɔ nwoma a ɛti bi nwɔtwe kyekyɛmu nsia sɛdeɛ papa ɛka no bere a Paul ɛkɔɔ sɛ ɔkɔka asɛmpa no akyerɛ no ɛtire nsia no ɔse na ɔtuaa wɔn ano wɔka abususɛm no ɔporo n'ataadeɛ mu ka kyerɛ wɔn sɛ mo mogya ɛngu mu ara mo atifi me deɛ me ho afi ɛfiri nnɛ meekɔ amanaman mu.
Saa me ho afi no ɛsɛ sɛ Kristoni biara tumi ko ɔkɔden no na ɔde asɛm no ma na amanfoɔ tie na sɛ wɔn antie a wowɔ Kristoni me ho afi.
That word or that sentence, I'm clean, is a responsibility for every Christian to make an effort to pass what you have heard in this room, what you have heard from the Bible to another member to hear the word of God.
Ɛno nti Israelfoɔ a yɛ ɔno ane mogya no antie no deɛ ɔkae ne sɛ from now on I will go preach to the Gentiles.
So his own members or his own blood who rejected what he was saying, Paul in Acts chapter 18 verse 6 said, I am clean. From henceforth, I'll go unto the Gentiles.
Ɛno nti onua na ɔte wo fie wa wo ba wa wo busuani no waka asɛm no akyerɛ no na watumi agyina wo nan so aka sɛ wo ho afi.
So the question this morning is that your relative your neighbor, your friend, have you spread or have you spoken the word of God to that particular person for you to boldly say that you are clean?
As a one to me and yes, idea, no one can summon armor oniana auntie and what in ye.
And if you've not done that, it implies that you never spoke the gospel for that particular person to hear it and listen very well.
Onyankopon gina hearing and listening so at the assemble man we say now wo no nipa o kokasa.
God is basing on hearing and listening to spread the gospel to the entire world, and you and me is the sole person who have to make an effort in spreading the gospel.
Anunti Paul the year ko onianu ba kufia no onye giuni verse 8 Crispus, the leader of the synagogue, and everyone in his household believed in the Lord.
So Paul, through pain, went to someone who was not a Jew by name Crispus.
Anunti afei odi asamno koma amama mufuo na eya homete sa wunua oben wo na won kita nkwaje kwan kese wei na wontumi nkira no na onti na ono so adane ababeye.
So out of pain, out of sorrow, Paul started preaching the word instead of to his closest people or people closer to him. He started spreading the gospel to outsiders, that's the Gentiles.
Wama onua oben wo nati asam no.
Have you let a brother, a friend, a relative, or neighbor closer to you hear the word of God?
Se wama onua na anti a unya kukuduro nka nkire onyankopon se wo.
If you've not let the person closer to you hear the word of God, you cannot get the boldness to tell God that you are clean.
Onua na owa che na opampam me da ase me nche bia me fi ha.
In no time, our time will be up.
Yeni onua bi sua de be 2 weeks ni. Na obisa question bi na areho die. O se enti se onyankopon gidie no ewo ho na ye ba kope na numu ne nkwaje wo a ensafo bebre atwa ho ahia wasase su. Won be ye den enomo nyampa.
2 weeks ago, we had a chance to give the gospel or had some teachings with one member. And the question that came out from the person is that if there is only one faith, there is only one God, and through that we are passing on that to heaven, what about those other churches which are surrounded by us? Does it imply that they are all going wayward?
Nti otie ani ntiye ade a onyankopon nam so atwi nipa nyina de won aba gospel no eho enu nti se wati na wonu abusuafo wo ha ma obi nso enti won ti ase yi.
So true hearing and listening is what God is using to spread the gospel. So if you and me had the opportunity to hear and we have listened very well, time is up for other members to get the chance to hear the gospel of Christ and listen well.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Amen.